Welcome to One Word, 5 Questions with Dr. Mark Andrew Holowchak and me, Donna Vitek. Dr. Holowchak is a retired professor of philosophy and history who has taught at institutions such as University of Pittsburgh, University of Michigan, and Rutgers University. He has over 20 published books on and close to 150 essays on Thomas Jefferson. And his list of books and the locations of his published essays will be in the comments section of the video on YouTube. With our show One Work, 5 Questions, I'll ask Dr. Holowchak 5 questions on one work of Thomas Jefferson's. Today, we are going to discuss an enclosure in a letter to Dr. Benjamin Rush, dated April 21st, 1803. Are you ready, Dr. Holowchak?
I'm as ready as I can be.
It's so good to see you. It's been a while since we've done an interview, so it's nice to be back.
Great to have you back.
First, I'm going to introduce the topic, and then we'll start off with our questions. Thomas Jefferson, in a letter to Joseph Priestley, dated April 9th, 1803, mentions reception of Priestley's Socrates and Jesus Compared. The booklet, a middling work, nonetheless, had a profound influence on Jefferson. He mentions also a promise that he made to Benjamin Rush to relate his view of the Christian system. Jefferson offers a precise of what would soon become his syllabus, and deism and ethical system of the Jews, the ancient Greek and Roman ethicians, and philosophy of Jesus. To Rush, some 2 weeks later, Jefferson fulfills that promise. He includes his syllabus with a short letter to Rush. Today, he examines the contents of the singular enclosure. Okay, are you ready for question number 1?
Let's get started.
Okay, Jefferson says in his letter to Rush, "To the corruptions of Christianity, I am indeed opposed, but not to the genuine precepts of Jesus himself. I am a Christian in the only sense he wished anyone to be, sincerely attached to his doctrines in preference to all others, ascribing to himself every human excellence and believing he never claimed any other." What exactly does he mean by those sentiments?
Yeah, that's a lengthy sentence and can easily mislead someone who reads it. One of the problems is people who read it want to use it as a sort of confirmatory evidence of their own views on Christianity. That's why I think we get into trouble. One needs to read this within the context of Jefferson's letters and writings on Christianity and Christ. The corruptions of Christianity, first off, he means the Platonizers, he says, the people that will talk about Christ being a member of the Godhead, that there are 3 gods in one. Jefferson's not a Trinitarian, he's a Unitarian, so he objects to that. But he does come late in life to believe that the precepts of Jesus captured in the 4 Gospels are the greatest system of morality. So he says, in a sense, he's a Christian insofar as he embraces and adopts as the most perfect and profound sense of morality the teachings of Christ through the 4 Gospels. So when he says I'm a Christian, the only sense Christ wished anyone to be means someone who adopts Jesus's philosophical principles. Jesus is a philosopher, not a son of a God. So he's sincerely attached to his doctrines. In preference, he says, to all others. And he says, ascribing to himself every human excellence. By that, Christ is a human being. He did not die and go to heaven. It's highly unlikely Jefferson believed in, and he didn't believe in an afterlife. I shouldn't say highly unlikely. He just didn't believe in a heaven or hell. So he was a human being. So he means to be a Christian is someone who accepts the principles of Christ in the manner that Christ wanted you to believe him, namely, not as the Son of God or some savior of mankind, but as a philosopher who had a profoundly simple, and I say simple insofar as a child could understand the precepts, right? That's the problem with the corruptions, is the people who write the Bible, they had miracles, they had all these other things, parables and everything that make it so hard to understand what Jesus meant. They corrupt it so that they are the only interpreters of what Christ had to say Christ never meant it that way. His teachings were simple. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah, of course, when I first read the letter, I had different hopes of what was intended, but that's why this is actually why I got in contact with you, because I wanted more clarity.
What's good about it is that we can't make Jefferson out to be the person we want him to be. As historians, we have to embrace him as he was. You know, if that's something we don't like, that's fine. I mean, it's not the job of a historian to mold people, to change them like people do today.
And that's what you've been wonderful at teaching me, accepting, and I think that's the greatest gift I've received from you, is learning how to understand history without putting my own personal feelings into how I interpret things. So thank you. Question number 2, what did Jefferson think about the system of the Jews?
Okay, here we get to his enclosure, and he says, their system was deism, that is, the belief of only one God, but their ideas of him and of his attributes were degrading and injurious. Their ethics were not only imperfect, but often irreconcilable with the sound dictates of reason and morality, as they respect intercourse with those around them, and repulsive and antisocial as respecting other nations. They needed reformation, therefore, in eminent degree. That's all he says. So in effect, he says, in other words, you read the Old Testament, what you get out of it is that there's one God. Other than that, it's not worth reading. End of story. How's that for a simple answer? Now, people don't want to hear that either, but we just thought the Old Testament was basically a waste of time. Therefore, the 4 Gospels are the only thing we're salvaging.
Wow. So insightful. What did Jefferson think about the ancient ethicians?
Now, the ancient philosophers, and it took me a while to get this right, because here I was always understanding why he would consider Jesus's teachings superior to the ancient philosophers. Now, as a philosopher, I happen to teach ancient ethicians, Plato, Aristotle, teaching of Socrates through Plato and Xenophon, the Stoics, whom I especially love. And, Jefferson read this stuff all the time. And to say that the teachings of Jesus are superior, it took me a long time to understand why he would think so. And, I figured it out because the ancient ethicians, in a sense, asked you to behave virtuously, to be courageous and just and generous, and all such things, and brave, all those sorts of things, wise. But there was a sort of return that you got from the ancients. You were virtuous, and then, Plato says virtue is its own reward, but still there was a return, which was equanimity, which meant a balance of my soul, that I live my life in such a way that I'm unperturbed by things happening. I can handle no matter what comes my way. That's a large return. What Jefferson says that Jesus taught that the ancients didn't, and it took me a while to disclose this, is this notion of beneficence. Benevolence is well-wishing, beneficence is doing well. Do well. Do unto others kind things without worrying about a return, without worrying about whether, he's not worried about what it does, balancing your soul. Presumably Jesus, thought something like that was true too. But the idea is just help other people out. Don't worry about a return. If we take that seriously, if we take Jefferson seriously, that Jesus was the greatest philosopher ever, and if you study the precepts of Jesus, it sheds considerable light on Jefferson, the human being, in all that he does. Instead of thinking, oh, Jefferson looked like he's behaving kindly here, when he let people come to Monticello and eat them out of house and home and eat all the hay meant for his horses, maybe Jefferson just was a kind human being. I think that's easily explains a lot of what people call Jefferson's hypocrisy. He was a hypocrite. He was a kind caring, generous person, not a rapist or a racist, as people commonly say.
Yes, yes, it's very sad to see what society is doing to him. Question number 4. What did Jefferson have to say about Jesus's doctrines?
Well, I've sort of answered that already. They were corrupted in the Gospels over the years, Jefferson thought. Parables and all that. He thought Jesus's teachings were so simple, and the proof of their verticality, the truthfulness of their verticality is the right word, I just leave it at that, is the fact that a child can understand them.
Mm-hmm. Help
people in need, show kindness, be generous, love other people. You don't need to give, why do I need to do that? We don't need to give an elaborate, Jesus is just saying, do that, right? And that's what is remarkably beautiful about the teachings of Jesus for Thomas Jefferson, is their remarkable simplicity. It's that even a child can embrace and understand them. It's when the priest and the religious dignitaries get a hold of them, they complicate them so that only they can be the interpreter. So you have to go to your local priest and say, what did Jesus mean by this? When Jefferson always says, be like the Quakers. You can access God your own way. You can pray to God. You don't need a minister. You don't need an intermediary. That's the wonderful thing about Jesus' teachings. It just tells you how to live, and you don't need someone to come in and tell you to intermediate between you and God.
That, in listening to your answer, it makes me wonder how much of an influence Martin Luther was on Thomas Jefferson, because isn't that what Martin Luther did with the start of the Protestant Reformation, by telling people they didn't have to do the things the Catholic Church was telling them they had to do, and that opened up a can of worms, so to speak. So I wonder how much of an influence Martin Luther may have been on.
I don't think there was any influence. I could be wrong. I could check that. I don't think he ever mentions Martin Luther, but he's trying to affect the same sort of reform. That was common at the time for people to write their own version of the Bible, which Jefferson does in 1804, and a second time in 1820, where he gets rid of the corruptions, the miracles, and Jesus going to heaven after he dies, and all things, turning water into wine, which is a neat trick. If I could turn water into beer really quickly, I could save a lot of money. But so he's trying to get rid of all those corruptions and just get to the teachings of Jesus, and in 1820 get at the life of the person, because not only listening to the words of someone, but finding out that that person lived consistent with those teachings is wonderful. How many people say beautiful things? You know, as a philosopher, many of my colleagues will teach ethics, and they read Kant and Hume and Thomas Jefferson and Plato and Aristotle, and it's all very beautiful. And it's sort of like, well, we're supposed to teach this. But like Jefferson, when I read that, it moves me, and it causes you to reflect and think about, incorporating some of these things in your life. And there's no question in my mind that Jesus had a profound, in the middle of his life, Jesus had a profound influence on Jefferson's life in terms of accepting, not judging other people, being kind and being generous and things like that.
The important virtues in our society. Question number 5, returning to the letter with the enclosure, Jefferson mentions his aversion to disclosure of his religious tenets to the public. It is an invitation for Rush to be hush-hush concerning the contents of the enclosure. What are your comments on this?
First off, Rush is a believer in the divinity of Christ, and Jefferson winds up defending Rush in this enclosure. The idea is that Jefferson, for good reasons, was always afraid of sharing his religious views with other people, because you can get in a lot of trouble as a politician. If it turns out that you're not accepting Christ as the Son of God, only as a philosopher, you're going to offend a lot of people in the young nation. And Jefferson did that in his notes on Virginia in query 16, is it, titled Religion? I think it's query 16. When he starts talking, it doesn't matter if you believe in no God or 20 gods, not offending anybody. So you have to be very, very cautious about what you said, because that could have severe implications for your political career. He was fond always telling people, say nothing of my religious beliefs to others. They are a matter between myself and my God. And he said that to other people. And there's something wise about that as well. I talked to you before about posts on Facebook, where someone posted something about how atheists are so much smarter than people who believe in God. And I'm offended by all that, any kind of proselytizing. And so was Jefferson. Is that, if a man believes in God, it's his affair with God, is his own affair, and that's it. So much for that. I'm not hearing you, by the way, so I can read your lips.
I had it. Well, I had my mic muted. The dogs are barking, and I couldn't hear you. So, and I thought I didn't want it coming over the screen. So today we've learned about Jefferson's views of Jesus, but what of his views of God? In our next episode, we turn to that topic in a late in life letter to John Adams. Ooh, one of my favorites.
We'll talk about Jefferson. We talk about Jefferson and Jesus. We talk about Jefferson's view of God. I've written perhaps more than anyone in the world on this topic. I find it very fascinating. I definitely believe in God. So I'll read the teaser for next week, and then we can be off. Jefferson was frequently accused of atheism for controversial comments such as, and I alluded to this earlier, it does me no injury for my neighbor to say that there are 20 gods and no God. It neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. So the question is, did Jefferson believe in God? And if so, what sort of God was his God? So next week we'll look at, I said query 16, it's query 17, titled Religion, of Jefferson's Notes on Virginia.
Okay. Oh, that's going to be very interesting to hear of his views on God. I'm really looking forward to that. And if you would like to contact Dr. Holowchak to be a guest speaker or for an interview, you can reach him at mholowchak@hotmail.com or his Facebook page, Thomas Jefferson, Bring Him Home to Monticello, Citizens for Change. Thank you so much for doing this today, Dr. Holowchak. It's been a pleasure. I miss you.
Thank you for having me, and look forward to doing this again next Sunday.
Yes. Oh, I don't know if we can do it next Sunday. I'm moving. My 21-year-old is moving to Orlando next Sunday. So I'm going to be.
We'll figure out pick this time to do this thing.
Or yeah, we can figure out another. Maybe do it a different day. Maybe, yeah, we can do it a different day. But Sunday we have to leave by 11. So.
Okay. Okay. Nice seeing you again, and I am off to go on a bike ride in this tremendously hot weather.
Well, be careful. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Have a nice day.